No hat. No hat. Okay. No hat, no glasses? I don't know. Gosh. I'm just at home and it's a podcast anyway. I'm not supposed to look pretty. Right. Okay. Since the topic today is mental health, I just wanted to wear the mad cat. The Cheshire cat, Bella. But he's mad, so he's a mad cat. Anyway. So, hello everybody and welcome back to my podcast, A Conversation with Kylie. And this episode is a conversation about mental health. I just want to throw a quick disclaimer out there because there will be mentions of depression, eating disorders, postpartum depression, anxiety. I'll try not to make it too heavy, but we will be talking about those things. So if you're not in a good place mentally right now, wag mo na lang muna panoorin. I just want you to feel okay and mentally in a good place since this is about mental health. So yeah, actually, alam nyo guys, I already recorded this episode 2 weeks ago, but I wasn't really happy with the original episode because I felt like it was a little bit too heavy and I was very emotional. And I didn't want it to feel like that. I want it to be uplifting. And I want this podcast to be more about the things that I learned and how I can help other people through their struggles. So I'm recording again. I'm also a perfectionist. So if I'm not happy with it, I'm not going to settle. I know now what my power is. I have the voice and I can speak it. And if I don't want to settle on something, I'm not. So I'm not going to settle on that episode that I'm not happy with. Lahat tayo, we have to deal with life through processing it through our mind. So that is mental health. Every day is you and processing the world with your mind. So we use our mind 24/7. So making sure that your mental health is in a good place is actually something that should be prioritized. And you can't process properly if you're not in a good place mentally. So, mental health is something that is definitely crucial and important. Which is why I put this topic in here, because I have been through a few mental health struggles throughout my life. There were some phases in my life where I felt like my feelings didn't matter and my thoughts didn't matter, and every time I would try and share some things that I was struggling with, either I was ignored or people made me feel like wala akong right para makaramdam ng struggle with my mental health. Something that I have learned since turning 30 is you have to take accountability for a lot of your life, especially because I wanted to start my journey to growing and my journey to growth, growth mentality, which means that there comes a certain point where you have to stop blaming people for the things that happen in your life. Like a lot of us, actually, a lot of our mental health struggles dates back to our childhood. And syempre, when you're a child, you don't really control what you're exposed to. And a lot of it becomes generational trauma. And everything that you're exposed to when you're a child until when you're 18 is out of your control. So sadly, when you're a kid, you are a sponge to the positive and the negative things that happen to you. I'm sure marirelate din kayo. There were a lot of things that happened in my life that were very traumatic. I wasn't really equipped to process everything that happened, especially since our family is in showbiz. So you tend to be more careful with who you share. Kung ano man yung pinagdadaanan mo, medyo mas maingat kang mag-share kung sino-sino because, you know, people know you. You've already lost the privilege of privacy. When I first noticed na I might be depressed, it was when my parents divorced when I was, how old was I? I think I was 16, 17. And I was experiencing very sad thoughts and I felt very closed off. I just knew that I wasn't in a good place. And then it sort of developed into an eating disorder because of the divorce. Syempre, when your family goes through a divorce, everyone is affected, but it was very traumatic, and everybody in my family felt the impact. And we weren't really there for each other, and I don't blame anyone. It's because we were all mourning, sobrang sad ng divorce. So we were all mourning and no one could really give support to each other kasi lahat kami, we were very sad about it. My personal journey with what happened was, I left Australia and I wanted to start working so that I could be more independent and that so I could provide for myself and also so that I could just start my life again. And when I started in showbiz, when I was in that mental state, it wasn't really healthy for me to go into showbiz. Everyone who has a job has certain, expectations. There are certain expectations that will be put on you. And responsibility mo na yun para, to do well in your job, to, deliver. But in my case, kasi, I was in a very vulnerable place during that time. And yeah, so I had an eating disorder that might have gotten worse. Like sometimes hindi na ako kumain. Like once na ako kakain and then minsan hindi na nga. And, isang Jamba juice lang yung kinakain ko and, just to stay thin. But also, it wasn't just because of my job. The thing about yung eating disorder ko was that yung pinagdaanan ko, the traumatic things that I hadn't processed yet in my childhood, they turned into self-loathing. I didn't want to take any space. Kasi the bigger space I'd take, parang hindi ko deserve eh. So I felt like, papaliitin ko yung sarili ko. Because that's how I felt inside. Very small, and I wanted to hide. And ayokong, I didn't want to step on anyone's shoes. Ang funny nga, because when you're an artist, diba, pag artista ka, you should be very confident and di ka matatakot na nasa iyo yung attention. But it was a very confusing time for me kasi what I was feeling inside was different from what was outside, diba? Gusto kong umarte, gusto kong gawin to, but really on the inside, I just felt like I wanted to disappear. So very, very contrasting realities yung nangyari. And then I fell in love when I turned 18. And nadala ko rin yung generational trauma ko sa relationship na yun and the succeeding relationships after that. Because I was running so much from the trauma, nadala ko sa relationship ko. And for quite some time, I was very jealous and I was very unstable emotionally kasi I didn't have any trust for men. I'm really grateful though for some of the relationships because they taught me a lot. But the thing is, nobody is gonna provide the love that you need to give yourself except for you. Kasi minsan, attract mo yung, the energy that you give out. And I believe in that so much. The energy that I give out. So if I'm not happy, if I'm not stable, if I'm not in a good place, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, ganun din yung ma-attract ko sa taong nagiging partner ko. So, for a long time, until I was 23, I had a series of very toxic relationships because I wasn't doing the work I had to do inside. I hadn't started my healing journey kasi tinatakbuhan ko, and I didn't process any of the pain and any of the trauma that happened to me in my life kasi nga I didn't know I needed to. Funny how that works. One of my relationships na nag-end came back and we tried again. And we were doing much better this time around, actually. Also, I got pregnant. During this time, I had my first taste of a spiritual awakening, sort of, because it's funny, every time that I got pregnant, nag-iiba yung mentality ko, and nag-iiba lang yung energy ko spiritually. Kasi nga, when women are pregnant, they are portals to different dimensions. Kasi nga, saan ba nanggagaling yung soul? So, diba? Habang ginagawa natin yung mga bata in our bodies, we are in a different sort of dimension. We're very awakened spiritually and very spiritually charged. Kasi, yun nga, we're making a miracle, and that's just the way God made us. So, I felt that energy very much every time that I got pregnant. And with Alas, I was very in a state of peace. And doon ko naramdaman din na marami akong kailangan i-heal sa sarili ko. There were a lot of things that I was processing during that time. Like, nawala yung ego ko for a bit kasi kinailangan kong kumain. And I really needed to take care of myself. So, hindi na ako pwedeng... Actually, that's when I stopped. That's when my eating disorder stopped. And also, I stopped smoking because I was a smoker. And then I gave birth. And then, sobrang saya actually. Those 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. Very peaceful naman yung buhay namin. And I also was in a very good place mentally during that time. I was happy during that time. And then I got pregnant with Xoxo, and same, I felt very spiritually charged during that time. And you know what? Kung hindi lang mahirap manganak, I would have 6 children. Totoo lang. The marriage started getting rocky during that time. Since I was so spiritually open, ramdam na ramdam ko rin yung lungkot nun. So, I think that's what resulted dun sa pinagdaanan ko naman when I gave birth. Because it, feeds into it a little bit. So nanganak ako, and then physically, I think I just shut down. I don't know what happened really, but I felt like I had an injury in my back after giving birth. I don't know. I will get it checked out. Don't worry. I started having physical reactions, like nanginginig yung katawan ko, my legs, from my hips down to my legs, and then I would feel it come up, and I felt very weak, nangihina ako. I was really not myself. Natakot ako actually because the physical pain that I felt, I cannot explain it. Sinasabi nila sa akin that it was postpartum depression, and I did get diagnosed for postpartum depression, and yung mga attacks ko when I was shaking, it was postpartum anxiety. Nahihirapan din ako maglakad. So, I was bedridden for like 3 to 4 months, and I wasn't able to take care of my kids for a good few months. Pag naaalala ko yun, nalulungkot ako sobra. Kasi, diba, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. But also, I was told to just stay in bed and rest. Nahirapan ako nun. Nahirapan akong i-process yung nangyayari sa akin. Because I had no control of my body. And then, Naririnig ko yung mga anak ko nasa baba. Because we lived in a 2-floor, 3-floor house. And naririnig ko sila sa baba. And gusto ko silang alagaan. I wanted so much to be able to take care of my kids after giving birth. Which is why, na-trauma din ako, guys. Kaya ayoko na mag-baby, sana. Because ayoko na maramdaman ulit yun. I felt like a failure to my kids. Because di ko control yung katawan ko. I know it wasn't my fault. Maybe emotionally, physically, talagang may imbalance in my hormones. And na-shock. Kasi lahat naman ng babae after giving birth, may shock talaga eh. So, di lang talaga kinaya. And there was only a 2-year interval after giving birth. So, pagod talaga yung katawan ko. My anxiety naman, it came from Axel not being able to suck properly kasi nagbe-breastfeed ako. One of my most favorite things about having babies is breastfeeding. Alam kong mahirap siya sa iba, but mahirap talaga siya. I mean, actually, pati ako nahirapan. Pero nawawala yung hirap whenever I connect pag na-latch na sila. And then you have, a bonding moment where magtitinginan lang kayo eye to eye. And oh my God, it's the best feeling of love. And sobrang na-in love talaga ako sa journey and whole process of breastfeeding. Oh. So yeah, but this time around kasi nahihirapan kami ni Axel because his suck wasn't so strong. Your body only responds to the suck of your baby. So kung malakas, it knows na kailangan niyang provide ng madaming milk. But when it's not, hindi yung magpa-provide. So, we had a konting struggle lang with breastfeeding. And every time na nararamdaman ko na naiiyak si Axel nung time na yun, because he had trouble sucking, nanginginig na yung buong katawan ko, and my anxiety would go through the roof, and di ko na siya makontrol. So, sabay-sabay yun. But I was very adamant na gusto kong mag-breastfeed. Kahit first 3 months lang. Kaya I was adamant about breastfeeding because I wanted to breastfeed him too. I breastfeeded Alas and I wanted to breastfeed Axel. I felt again like a failure. Nangyari to December 2019. So just before the pandemic. And every time I would get checkups, kasi dahil sa anxiety, for anyone who hasn't experienced it, mine manifested in a way where para akong atakin sa puso all the time. Like, ang sakit ng chest ko here. It's very heavy. And then, bigla na lang ako iiyak out of nowhere. So, and I had checkups. My blood was fine. Everything was fine. So, hindi ko alam kung ano yun. Sadly, I was not able to be the best mom I could have been, the best wife I could have been. If I'm going to be super duper honest, during that time, I expected na kahit mahirap, we would survive it. But not all partners are able to love their partners when they're in the ugliest place and the worst place that they've been. And I was not me. Nag-gain ako ng weight. And I wasn't as strong as I used to be. Sobrang laki ng pride ko because I was the strongest when I was a kid. Malakas ako, never ako nagkakasakit. Pag challenge kami ng tatay ko with something physical, I would be the one. I would win. And sobrang prideful ko when it comes to that part of me. I'm very sporty and I did everything. And biglang nawala yun sa akin. And I couldn't say sorry for it. Kasi it wasn't my fault. It's not my fault na ganun yung nangyari sa akin. And somehow, naging issue siya. Naghiwalay kami ng ex ko. And I was devastated. So after we separated, I went through another bout of depression. But, there's a blessing behind it. Because I feel like whatever happened was a gateway for my growth. And I said this in my first episode. Sobrang naging humble ako. And I want to become a better person for my kids. Sila na talaga yung compass ko sa lahat ng ginagawa ko. Guys, lumipat ako because nag-start sila ng construction sa labas. and rinig na rinig siya. So I tried to move somewhere quieter. I hope this does it, but tuloy natin. What was I saying? So I was saying na after nga namin maghiwalay, I really, prayed to God na kung ano man ang kailangan kong pagdaanan uh, sa buhay ko, sana it will result to my growth as a person, because I really wanted to become a better person. And that's still my goal every day. I want to become a better person because of my kids, because they deserve a parent that's, number one, happy, and also, number two, a parent that's healed, and a parent that breaks generational trauma. That was the catalyst. And after I prayed for that, I really had a rude awakening to my realities and my tendencies and who I am as a person. Nagising ako sa sarili ko. And which is why I'm very thankful kahit mahirap yung pinagdaanan ng family namin. I'm very grateful because it changed me as a person. And so, in the process of trying to heal myself, nag-deep dive ako sa childhood ko. And I've always liked journaling, but this time I started journaling with the goal of trying to heal myself and everything that I have ever been through, all the traumatic events. Sinulat ko lahat and I processed it. Parang I imagined myself nandun sa situation na yun, and niyakap ko lang yung sarili ko while I was in that situation. And I told myself everything that I needed to hear nung nandun ako sa mga situation na medyo traumatic sa akin. And iniyak ko lang ng iniyak. And there were times na one whole week akong malungkot, or one whole week I was grieving. Natututo na akong i-separate yung emotions ko. So every time I feel sad, I can detect right away if it's sadness or if it's grief. If it's anger or if it's regret, na di-distinguish ko na lahat ng emotion ko. And I realized within myself nung ginagawa ko yon, when I was trying to heal my childhood trauma, the generational trauma, was that I didn't really need to understand kung ano yung nararamdaman ko. I just needed to validate my emotions. And if no one did it for me nung time na yon, I went back inside my head and I did it for myself. Vinalidate ko yung feelings ko. And I told myself that I had the right to feel what I was feeling during that time. Kasi bata pa lang ako noon eh. I had also a lot of anger kasi why was I exposed to so much trauma as a kid? Bata pa lang ako noon. So, hinil ko rin yung anger na yon and I processed it. Mahabang proseso siya. Pero ginusto ko na talagang i-heal kasi ayoko nang mag-base ng decisions ko sa buhay dahil sa fear, dahil sa trauma, dahil sa anxiety, dahil sa depression ko. I no longer wanted to attach myself to that person kasi I know that I had the power and I have the power to heal myself and heal my brain and heal my heart. I'm in that process now. I only started when I was 30. So it's never too late. Kung ikaw may pinagdadaanan ka na medyo mahirap, and you have trauma and you're carrying your trauma and you have depression, there is a way to heal yourself. And that is to detach yourself muna sa lahat ng beliefs mo, sa lahat ng trauma mo, sa lahat ng iniisip mo na ganito ka, you're this, you're that. Detach mo muna yung sarili mo. And then, try to get in touch with your essence, kung sino ka talaga. Nung ginawa ko yun, nung nilet go ko na yung galit ko, and all my rage, and all my anger, and all my shame, everything. Alam niyo kung ano natira? I just had this feeling of love inside myself. And gusto ko lang i-share yung love na yun. And parang niyakap ko yung sarili ko with that. And I know na ang frequency talaga ng bawat tao is love. It's just that minsan, pag may trauma nga tayo and when we're going through something, nagsisettle na tayo dun sa thought na, I'm not worth anything. You know, those thoughts na paulit-ulit lang sa utak mo na nagiging depression na siya, and it becomes whatever way or how you think, yun yung mantra mo sa buhay. So if you have thoughts like that na nag-e-echo, kasi yun yung narinig mo nung bata ka, tapos paulit-ulit siya sa utak mo, it will become your reality. And if you talk to yourself with so much self-hate and self-loathing, like the way I did nung nandun pa ako, stuck pa ako sa pattern ko na yun, nagiging reality mo siya and you believe it. That's the power of your mind. So once na i-start mo, na i-detect mo lahat yon na hindi ako ganito, hindi ako walang kwenta. You don't. I am not a failure. While I'm alive, I am someone who is growing and changing and learning. All you need is a support system and people who actually understand you and don't judge you for how you feel. You need someone to validate your emotions. Siyempre, kaya mong gawin yun para sa sarili mo. But you also need someone who can validate your emotions with you. Kasi if you're surrounded by people who don't validate your emotions and who you are and your essence, hindi siya mangyayari. Sobrang lala ng pinagdaanan ko, guys. When I was still stuck in my pattern. There were a lot of people who called me crazy and a lot of people who didn't listen, who didn't believe me, who even mocked me. Kasi there's still that stigma na, yun na nga, I was provided for. I was very blessed as a child. Kung sa labas mo siya titignan, yes, I was very, very blessed. But there are a lot of things na nangyari that caused me to have a mental illness. And marami tayong makaka-relate doon. Ang mental health struggle naman, hindi siya nakikita sa labas. So I felt like an outcast for a long time and I just wanted to shut myself up. Sa totoo lang. Kasi I didn't wanna, make anyone uncomfortable anymore. So, I just kept my head down. Kaso lang, nung hindi na ako nag-open up nung time na yun, and I felt like everyone was judging me, lalo lang lumalim yung depression ko. And yun yung pinaka-dangerous na feeling when you have that feeling. So please, don't get stuck there. Reach out to someone you know na makikinig sa'yo. Reach out to someone who you know will support you and will validate your existence. I'm very grateful for my best friends and my family members who were there for me nung time na yun and are still there for me kasi hindi sa lahat ng panahon 100% tayo okay and 100% happy tayo. Meron talaga tayong pagdadaanan. And minsan, it's out of our control also. Diba? May mga retrograde and may mga things na nangyayari in the universe that also affect us. Just a few things before I end this video. You have to also know your family history when it comes to mental illnesses and generational trauma and lahat ng bagay na yun because it all affects you. And if you're someone who's willing to break the pattern and try and be a better version of yourself, kailangan mong maging aware sa patterns ng family members mo, your parents. And you need to be aware because for sure dala-dala mo rin yung traits nila. And if you really want to change, you need super laser focus to, lock into those negative traits, and for you to change them, you're gonna need to be super in the moment. Like for me, sometimes I have rage issues, and it's something that was passed down. And every time before I actually get angry, I breathe, take a moment to breathe, and identify ko na yung emotion na nararamdaman ko. And before I react, I try my best to calm myself down and to think rationally kasi I don't want to affect anybody else na with that generational trauma. So I do my best. I am only human and I am a working mom. I am a working single mom. So minsan, pagod tayo. But It's small progress every day for me, and that's what's important. And just a few notes. I'm looking at my notes, guys, because I really um, want to get this message across. Here are some things that I wrote down just for you to remember. I really want you to pick something up from this podcast. I'm sorry na palipat-lipat ako today, but I really wanted to get this podcast done. So be kind to yourself. This journey na you're trying to be more accountable and trying to help yourself, it's going to be hard, lalo na if you're going to take accountability for your life. There is a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do. And I want you to be kind to yourself while you do it. Please. Pag ginawa niyo yung ginawa ko na babalik kayo sa true essence nyo, you will feel that the love is gonna come from yourself. And parang yayakapin mo yung sarili mo. And I want you to feel that all the time. So be kind to yourself and be more forgiving to yourself. Isa pa, your childhood is not your fault. So, baka may pagdadaan ka kasing magagalit ka eh. But, when you pass that stage, when you know that your parents or whoever raised you were doing the best with what they had and what they could have done, so, iintindihan mo na rin na mapapatawad mo na rin sila. Pag naintindihan mo na the fact is they did their best with what they had. Your childhood is not your fault. Here, know your family history, yun nga. So, know your family history when it comes to mental illnesses kasi mas maiintindihan mo lang and you won't be so hard on yourself and mababawasan yung shame also if you do have a mental illness. Yun. You need to better understand yourself and give yourself the empathy that you need. Yeah, so know your family history. Your feelings are valid. If nobody ever told you that your feelings are valid, I want you to know that your feelings are valid. If ever man may time sa buhay mo na hindi pinaramdam yun sa'yo, I want to be the one to tell you that your feelings are valid and were valid and are still valid. Healing takes time. And healing is not a linear line. May mga times na feeling mo healed ka na and then one moment, malungkot ka ulit and marami ka na namang process na emotions. And I want to tell you that that's normal. Kasama talaga yun. Every time that we struggle, diba? Every time I said that you fail, it's a chance for a rebirth. So, ganun lang ang buhay. It's a cycle. And mangyayari at mangyayari yun. And always know that and have faith that nangyayari lang yun because it's time for you to grow out of a version of yourself or you're going to become a better version of yourself. Forgiveness is key. I love this one. I'm still trying to process it today. And I have an episode in my podcast for this. So, forgiveness is key. Kung hindi mo kayang i-forgive yung ibang tao muna because matagal talaga yung proseso na yun, what we want to work on is how to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Forgiveness is key. The next one is you are not your trauma. Minsan kasi meron tayong part ng personality natin na na-form out of our trauma and we got used to being that version of ourselves because that's just what we got used to. And it may have formed since you were a kid. Like it could have been your defense mechanism for some time and then you kind of got used to being that way. But you're not your trauma. Hindi ikaw yun. There's a better version of yourself. Maybe a version of yourself that smiles more or laughs more. And I already said this. Love is your natural state. Sa lahat ng tao, I would be the one to say this because I was in a state of shame for a long, long, long time. And I just refused to believe that love was my natural state kasi ang daming nangyari sa buhay ko na would debunk that that thought alone. So, the moment na nagising ako sa katotohanan that love is my natural state, ang daming na-unlock sa akin and na-heal sa akin. Because I myself could start healing myself when I realized that love is my natural state and love is my natural essence. So, sana, while you're on your healing journey, you also realize that love is your natural state. take accountability. So taking accountability, like on my personal, if I go personal with this one, yung paghihiwalay namin, I know na may mga pagkakamali din ako nun. Na may times na I would rather take care of my kid. I love my kids more than my ex. So I didn't really make time for both of us, like date night or stuff like that. Hindi na ako interesado. Niyayaya niya ako mag-date somewhere and I wouldn't want to go. I'd rather stay home. Kasi nga, may depression din ako nun. So, I take accountability na medyo nagkamali ako dun. I should have given us date night and more time together. But, ganun talaga. I take accountability though. I know I was wrong. But I don't regret it because I do love my kids more than anything. I wrote another one. Be aware of your conditioning. May conditioning sa atin, and our belief systems were created when we were very, very young. And kaya nga nang sinabi ko kanina, it was out of our control. So, ang ginawa ko nung time na hinihil ko yung part na to was sinulat ko lahat ng beliefs ko sa sarili ko in a notebook. And then, I wrote all the beliefs that I believe I am and I want to believe that I am. Tapos, tinignan ko yung difference. And then, nakita ko na some belief systems that I carried with me, I didn't believe anymore. Pero conditioning ko na lang yun. So, I wrote down the ones and circled the ones na gusto ko talagang i-practice. I memorized them. And every day, I try to practice them. And dun ko naman binibreak yung conditioning ko from when I was a kid. Itong last one, this was very, very, very mind-blowing for me. I read a book and this is the book. Okay, yan na lang. So when I read this book, sobrang mind-blowing and life-changing niya sa akin. Kasi a summary of the book is you can change the way that you think. Parang sinasabi doon, anything that you think you are and you think you believe, mababago yun. You are able to change your mind, and whatever you think you are, your personality is, and who you think you are, pwede mo pang baguhin yun. You can change the way that you think. And for me, I was very attached to my identity with my trauma and my depression and who I thought I was and who I became because of my fears. So, para sabihin sa akin ng isang libro and that writer, na kaya ko pang baguhin yun, it was a ray of hope for me. Kasi it means that if I do the right work, and if I focus, laser focus on the things that I want to change on myself, then I can do the best to be a better person and be the version of Kylie that I want to be. Like, I'm not stuck to the version of Kylie that was made when I was 4 years old, when I was 14 years old, when I was 17 years old. Kung sino man yun, kaya ko siyang i-heal and then I can make the version of Kylie that I'm happy to live with for the rest of my life. And the blessing is that life is a cycle. If I focus my mind on just growing and changing and becoming a better person with more empathy and move with love, then I don't have to be stuck with that version of myself that I've been stuck with for so long. And sobrang mind-blowing nun sa akin. And I'm so grateful that kung ano man yung pinagdaanan ko in my past and who I was, may hope pa siyang baguhin and to make into a better person. And yun naman talaga yung goal. And mapapansin nyo that it will be a theme, a recurring theme in my podcast, that it's about growth talaga. It's a growth mindset. Sorry guys, I don't really want to dwell on depression kasi and my postpartum because I want to go to the solution and I want to go to the things that you can learn once you learn that you can control your mind. I am in no way trying to invalidate anyone's journey. Of all people, I should know because my depression was also crippling during that time. And I don't want anyone to stay in that dark place. If I can use my podcast to help someone get out of the dark place, it's a dream come true. If you are in that place, remember, importante na may support system ka and hindi ka nag-iisa and wag kang maniwala sa sinasabi ng utak mo. Sometimes your mind lies. That's why I want you to know that your true essence is love. Your true state is love. Once na hayaan mong pumasok yun sa isip mo, and once na hayaan mong i-take over ka ng love na yun na galing sa sarili mo, so many things will change for you. And nagiging cheesy na po, ayoko na. Perfect, because our next episode is about self-love, and I hope I see you there in that next episode. Pasensya na, medyo magulo po ang setup ngayon. I'm sure naririnig nyo pa rin yung construction dito sa bahay. Pasensya na po. But I'll try to do better with the timing of my podcast. Anyway, maraming salamat po. I hope nakatulong in some way. Keep the love, everybody, and see you in the next episode. Bye!